You know, I have a question, because I remember very early on, like the second season, you said to me at one point, just in some casual conversation, well, I know how it ends. And I wonder if it still ended the way...
Yeah, it did. We talked about this a long time ago.
A long time ago.
To tell you guys, after the last episode, right? I watched it with my friends in Montauk, and I hadn't been around a lot of the public. You know, I've been out in Montauk with my friends. So all of a sudden, I come into the city, I'm getting the facial, I go across the Crate and Barrel, and it's the first time I was outside, and I'm walking down, and this woman is like this about the last episode. She's like this. Did you like the ending? Across Crate and Barrel, screaming at me. I was like, whoa, whoa, back up. I mean, she was like attacking me. I was like, hon, I'm backing. I was like, all that. So some of the ending, what happened with you, David? Did you have a lot of...
You were out of the country, right, when it aired?
I was out of the country, yeah.
David fled.
There's a lot was written about it, you know.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about his audience. He spit in the face of the audience.
Oh, my God. That's why I don't read things.
I thought you did that from day one.
He finally took them 7 years to catch on.
But see, that's why I don't read the papers. But this is what you got to deal with. So, were you hurt by it?
No. I personally thought there'd be a reaction, but I didn't realize it would go on that long, especially since we were at war in Iraq. I thought people might talk about that.
Well,
No.
Hello?
And also there had been a terrorist, those two aborted terrorist bombings in London. No. People were just talking about, you know, the end of The Sopranos. That's all they were talking about. What I didn't like was the number of people who wanted to see him dead. They really wanted to see his brains splattered across the restaurant. They really did.
Well, that's the thing, in trying to analyze it with people who complained about it, I said, would you really rather have seen that entire family slaughtered in a restaurant? Is that how you wanted the show? They go, no, I guess not. And I said, well, then why wasn't this okay? I mean, because I guess you can fill it in. If that's what you wanted in your head, you can say, well, that's what happened. But do you really want to see that? And they're like, oh, I don't know, I guess not.
But did it change? Because I know even on my level where I was away during this, people after a while, first everybody was like, oh, I didn't like the ending. And then a week or two went by, and then people were like, well, you know, I got it. Oh, no, I really did. Like, oh, you know, that was really brilliant. So it took a while.
Yeah.
I think there was a large percentage of people who were like, well, at first I didn't like it, but, you know, it really is good. And then I got a lot of people loving it. And loving it and loving it. Did you get that back after a while?
Finally,
I
yeah.
think, you know, a million people say, what do you think about the ending? You know, as if I had something to do with it, you know.
Yes. Yes.
And what I felt was, the only thing I predicted early on was that whatever it is, it will not be the expected ending. And what I think is, I really thought about it a lot. I thought it fit the profile of the show, which is that from the very beginning, the show was unpredictable.
Yes.
That's one of the most astounding things, was that somehow it continually surprised. And that's why everybody liked the show, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, the thing that people admired among many things was that the show was absolutely unpredictable.
Yeah.
And the ending that you came up with, to me, was the only ending that somebody couldn't predict.
Brilliant.
Exactly.
Anybody else would have predicted, she got
Tony
shot,
dies.
he gets
This
shot, Tony
happened, who
dies,
dies,
he gets
who doesn't die, what happens?
Meadow turns him in, you know, whatever. All those could have been predicted.
Our first big success in that realm was the shooting of Richie. I think that one, people
That was
just
pretty
didn't see that coming at all.
In writing of that, once we realized that Richie had to go, I remember David said, well, it should be, you know, it has to be done, but it should be done in the most unexpected way possible. Because it was heading toward Tony and Richie having this showdown.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you said, well, you know, Aida's character should do it, Janice should do it.
That's pretty brilliant.
And you know,
That was a
This is the way it came out. I
Yeah.
mean, it happened without her thinking about
So
it.
maybe
Just
that's it.
happened.
That's the reason why people were disappointed in him, because they wanted a shock as opposed to a cerebral thinking.
Thinking about the ending, I'm just curious about, you know, one of the things that I noticed was that I thought that I don't know, I wonder if this was conscious or just the way I interpreted it, that it seemed to include every possibility. In other words, they're in the restaurant, so the first thing people are going to think is they're going to blow it up, like back in the early.
Oh,
see,
yeah.
you know, she's out at the car,
I didn't think about
so
that.
she's having this trouble parking. They're going to kill her. Okay.
I did think about
In
that.
comes the Italian guy. I think he comes in first.
Yeah.
So clearly it's a mob hit. No, it's going to be the black guys that do it.
Because we had done Black Eyes before.
Yeah, exactly.
The two black
So I
guys.
thought that what it did was it hit on, in its little microcosm, it hit on every conceivable solution that everybody has guessed, and then says, no, none of them.
Filmically, that show had a lot to do with our favorite scene from 2001, when the astronaut wakes up. That episode was sort of, believe it or not, kind of based on that.
That's interesting.
Was it seeing himself in the frame, that
Yeah,
sort of stuff?
sort of projecting himself into his own future.
You had Jim in that monkey costume in that one scene, but you edited that out.
I know. Well, we refused to throw the bone in the air.
But when he went to black, I mean, come on, that was just beautiful.
I watched it with my
everyone was
entire
like,
family.
my TV is out. Everybody thought
We had just flown in from LA. I hadn't seen my family in months, and we literally just got to New York at like 7:30, drove right to my sister's house in Brooklyn, ate, watched The Sopranos, and I had made the mistake because people were pumping me for a month. What's the ending like? I said, it's all I'll say is it's very satisfying, which was the worst thing to say.
Oh, no. You said that?
Did you say that on
I
purpose
said, you'll be,
to like mess
no,
their head up?
I just wanted to stop talking about it. So I said, look, you'll be very happy with the ending. And the screen went black, and there was a din of like 15 people. What the hell? And I said, good night, everybody. And it was like 10:01, and we were out the door and gone. And but I could still, as we were getting into the car outside, I could still hear everybody like the screaming and the debating back and
That was
forth.
just beautiful.
But it was great.
The best story I heard was friends of ours were watching it with her mother and father. These are two people who are in their 80s now, I guess. And there was our friends, the mother and father, and I guess a couple other people in the room, and the screen went blank, and the grandmother said, I didn't do anything.
That's great.
That was good. That's what the grandmother says that. The grandmother.
I think in the first season, there was a sort of a half-hearted idea to, at some point, Melfi was going to write a book about her experiences, like, Shrink to the Mob or something like that.
Really?
He was going to write it as like a scholarly book, but it was going to, get onto the New York Times bestseller list because... And then they were going to make a TV movie about it with Anthony LaPaglia.
No, that was great.
That's a great
right.
idea. That is a great idea.
We had actually also talked about doing a full hour of a network hour of The Sopranos, and just have everybody recast like
Recast
that.
everybody.
Yeah, and just don't mention it, don't shine a light on it. Just present the show. Do it as a network show where there's no cursing, no graphic
Change the
violence.
titles,
change
everything. So you'd have those
Right.
freeze frames and all that stuff. Change everything. But we were going to keep Lorraine, but Lorraine was going to play Carmela
Right,
because
we'd say
because
that
she
would have
played
been
it already in the movie.
The casting
so therefore,
choice, the network casting choice would have probably favored Lorraine for that role. But yeah, that was one of the. I had long pitched a dream sequence where Tony was Ralph Cramden and Michael was Ed Norton, and Edie was Alice. I think David just said we were never going to do that, so please stop pitching that. And I kept seeing our characters within American Indians, and thought for some reason this is going to. I just went on for months. I was like, I just see, I know there's going to be a great show. We can somehow get our guys in with a group of Native Americans. Hilarity has to ensue. And finally, I read about the fact that American Indians protested Columbus. And I finally had the Italian-American connection. I came in, I got it. So I pitched that, and then we did that show, and probably our
the most
least favorite
reviled show
ever.
So, Robert, even though this is years ago, how did you feel when you had one of the first famous lines in the, what was that, the first episode? Was that
It
the
was the
pilot?
pilot.
I mean, did people, when you were younger, and this is years ago and the show had just started, but did people come up to you and say, oh, I love that line? I mean, what is the exact line? Do you remember?
No fucking ZD. And,
Wasn't that in your audition, too? Was that?
Was it?
Yeah,
Oh, you
right?
Yeah.
That line stood out.
Yeah. I didn't even know how funny it was going to be until we watched it.
It just comes so out of left field. It was so great. I remember watching the pilot, too.
It's just deadpan too. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
Like Nancy
No,
was the
no,
best.
Well, also, don't both Tony and Carmela both go, oh! The usual response. One of the things about the show was the unbelievable number of quotable lines from the show. I mean, there's just no one who can't quote lines. There's so many of them. I mean, from the great thing about where you say, I want to fuck Angie Dickinson, but let's do Get Lucky first, which elicited a letter from her saying thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
she was knocked out.
She was
by
knocked out.
really?
And the throwing of the orange juice, and it says, I bought you the orange juice with pulp, and he says, I said some pulp, and then she throws the orange juice at him. And,
He points like this to the bottom.
some pulp. And I mean, it's just so specific about the kind of crap that America
how
is
much
filled
choice
with.
we have,
And how
right.
much choice.
And what
You
people complain
it's,
about.
They got a war over in Iraq, but I said some pulp.
Right.
The other one I remember was being on the set, and very specifically, we needed a line for Stevie. They were talking about Tony and his health issues and how he's eating and not eating properly. And I remember you were there and you said, fish and rice. in Japan they live so long they have to commit suicide. And I just remember you thinking of it on the set.
You do a good David, too. That was good.
Nancy was my favorite. Like when I watched the first year, every time they would have the dinner scenes, which I loved watching the dinner scenes, and then Nancy would be there and she would eat. Her eating to me was the best. She'd just be like, I don't get. She'd be like stubborn. Like we're all like, oh, should I eat on camera? And she's like, well, I just want, like eating and living it, and oh.
It's always jarring when you see Nancy Marchand in a different role. You can't. You really appreciate how unlike Livia she was.
Exactly.
She's always this,
yeah.
matriarchal,
Classy.
beautiful, just so well spoken. And then you go to, wow, that was Livia. That I had an autographed poster of everybody from the first season. I had every actor sign it. The last actor I didn't have was Nancy, because she didn't really. She only came on set to work because she was ill, I think, at the time. So she would always be in her Livia makeup. And I was really reluctant to approach her because she was Livia. And you're afraid to talk to her. And finally I said, God, I just love her to autograph this poster. And I went up to her one day and I said, I really feel stupid asking you this, but would you mind signing my poster? And she could not have been nicer and sweeter. And I realized that was the real Nancy. And I had only been looking at her like Livia and didn't really know her. But she was so sweet and not that woman at all.
That was a tough role to cast. We went through 100 actresses and actors, and just nobody had a clue. We were going to start shooting, I think, in a day or two. And she came up the stairs, and she was already having trouble breathing and stuff, but she did. It was just like, there it was, you know?
That's so great.
And it's so interesting thinking, like, based on her prior work, you never probably would have gone from her to that role.
Okay.
Such a great
actress. She was incredible. It was hard because, as people know, this was sort of based on my mother. Mm-hmm. She wasn't like my mother, and yet she was exactly like my mother. And she must have known that. This is early on during the pilot. She said to Denise, she said, I trust this creature that I'm portraying is deceased.
That's great.
She said that?
This creature that I'm portraying. That's great. She was so sharp.
I remember being like 13 and having no idea what I was doing on the show, no idea about anything, and just looking at her and being like, this lady's awesome. And I just remember being like, she is unbelievable.
The two of you were amazing
those
together.
two together, huh?
That was fantastic. And I wonder if you had many plans for those two had she, not passed away.
We figured out something to bring her back into the show, which was that Tony was going to need her to testify for him in court. Wow. Remember he got busted with the airline tickets and everything? Yeah. He was going to have to go over there and sort of kind of make his peace with her so that she'd say the right things in court. But then she died, so we didn't have to do that. But because we were trying to get her back in, she was basically, down to a few phone calls during that second season.
And also, the thing about her that you were saying is that, when you were saying that she wasn't quite who you expected, that was the thing I noticed, that, she was so much funnier and kind of just like youthful, really youthful. And I remember this one day we were shooting, and because of her medication, she couldn't remember a line. And we were doing something at the dinner table, and she kept blowing the line, and I did one of those things that you do when you're repressed, and don't have enough therapy or something, where I was supposed to say, I think to Robert, I think you should kiss her, and I said you should slap her. and it was one of those things where I hoped that it just slid by, and suddenly Nancy turned around and said, "Is there a Dr. Freud in the house?"
Wow.
Yeah. So she didn't let it slide, but she's also in that same. It was when after Tony's been shot. She was in the. She kept saying, "You're all disfigured," and I know that wasn't in the script, but she was going to put that in there, which I thought was great. Really? You're all disfigured. I thought that was great.
Her ability as a theater actor gave her a command of the language, and she knew how to deliver those lines. She could deliver a line and make it sound like it's real.
Yeah.
And that's the gift of acting. And she also knew what silences are. See, that's the difference between acting and good acting.
That's a hard one.
I remember one time I was sitting in a bus, in a van, we're going home, and an actor was coming over to me and talking to me about the old neighborhood in the Bronx. And Nancy was sitting up front with the driver. And it was a very mundane, kind of boring thing. This actor was interrupting the mood of the van. Yeah. Nancy went like this. She went like this. She looked at me like, Dominic, tell this guy to shut the fuck up, something like that. And I realized that was Livia.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you give her a line, she'll know if the line was superfluous. But the lines, thank God, they were always beautiful lines. I mean, the writing was incredible for the show.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the writing was incredible. So she knew
Yeah.
We know, and that's the theater acting, and working with great scripts, you know.
I mean, you feel blessed when I look back to be part of this show because I got an opportunity to work with Nancy. And it was sentimental for me that filming in the hospital because my mom was sick with lung cancer, same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Both in the wheelchairs and both died within 2 weeks. And it was working with her knowing that she was the consummate actress, her having trouble remembering lines because of cancer. And yet we just worked together. It was just like, I don't know, it was special. You don't get those things in life. You don't get a lot of moments of that quality and those special things with all the combinations. You just don't get that.
The question I wanted to ask you was, you had worked with Jimmy outside of this.
I mean, well, I met James doing Streetcar. It was 16 years ago. And he played my husband. We were Eunice and Steve Hubble. We kind of just bonded. And I remembered saying to his friends, because they came to see the show, and I said, this is a good actor. I said, he's really good. And I remember we just kind of had a chemistry, and then we did a movie, and we did Angie together. And so, you know, he always respected me, and I love James. It was just this kind of, I guess, karmic connection. And when he called me a year before, when you were doing the first year, he goes, you know, I just want you to know there might be like, I'm doing this TV thing, and there might be a sister. I was like, well, you know, let him know, I need a job, you know. It was like, so I didn't actually go in till the year later. I remember how nervous I was at that audition because, I mean, I love the show, but I also was $30,000 in debt. So I said, look, James, if I don't get the job, I don't get the job, but you gotta lend me money. With James, I don't know, just some people you just kind of, it's easy with, there's some chemistry, and you know, I love working with James. It's
You were
easy.
really believable as a brother and sister.
Yeah, totally believable. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were. We have, you know, that love, hate. Some days you want to kill them.
You know, when you talk about, what do you call it, famous, I mean, this isn't a famous line, but like Denise and I say this all the time, which he says all the time, you say all the time, is there's a lot of things I could say right now that I'm not going to say.
That is, you know, I love when that comes up. And then
Actually,
I love that line.
Kim and I are always saying, because this is like a subtle thing that was so great about your use of language. It says, well, go to Rite Aids and see if they've got it. It's the use of the plural, Rite Aids. You know, it's just those little subtle things that go right by
Teebs.
most people. I've said that.
I always love that.
Yeah, who said it? I don't know. Captain Teebs. I don't know.
Well, they wanted to get rid of me, and then, you know, I gave you some money.
When did we try to get rid of you?
She was on a bus at the end of season 2.
Oh, that's true.
And I was like, David, do I come back? He's like, I don't know. I was like, okay.
Well, that's when you get on the bus when he says,
Well, I think I remember saying to you, I said, as long as you don't hear a sound of the bus crashing as it rolls away, you can always come back. You're alive, so, you know,
people
who knows?
hated to die on the show, too.
Oh, that was the one time when people got really weird.
Although the one I really liked in the beginning of episode.
Yeah, Patsy,
it was just
Philly Parisi.
Is it Philly that gets shot? Yeah.
Philly
because-
gets shot, and then
So,
they
'cause I
liked
remember I
Dan
came-
Grimaldi so much he had a twin brother.
I came back and I said, you know, you made a big mistake killing this guy. He's great. And you said, you know what? You're right. I'm going to bring him back as his twin. I remember that
The
very
great thing
specifically.
in the TV Academy bylaws, you can do that one time on a series. Like, he has a twin brother, and it's like we exercise that option. And
You directed that scene where,
Yeah.
with who? Philly was
Philly.
the Philly.
and Gigi.
Philly, and Dan had this thing where he went heh, like that. He did this like Italian heh. People would say something to him and he'd go heh. And so I brought him back for that, and he never did it again. I said, remember what you did? That was so great. He said, I don't remember that. What are you talking about? I said, no, you did this like
That was my
thing.
other brother.
No, yeah, it was a
Philly
different.
did
Maybe
that,
he
yeah.
was saying, I'm not going to do it because it was a different character. Maybe that he just didn't want to do it.
Maybe that's what Philly did, and Patsy didn't do
Right.
that. You know?
What's weird about this show too is because like sometimes you don't even get to, because I don't watch the show, so sometimes you don't even get to see the people's character if you don't work with them. Like Lorraine, and I never got to work with Lorraine, so you don't notice it. I remember I had a scene with Steve Sharippa. I never really knew like talking to his character. I just couldn't look at him and speak to him without losing it because he was so great, and you don't even.
Oh my God, he was funny.
Well, there was a point too, like in the second or third season, Steve called me up. He said, "Is Uncle Junior ever going to get out of house arrest?" And I said, "Well, you don't want him out of house arrest." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, if he's in house arrest, he needs somebody to talk to. If he's got somebody to talk to, that's you. So you're in the house with him."
That's
He goes, "Yeah, right. Yeah, keep him in there. That's great." I said, he can talk to anybody if he goes outside. He doesn't need you anymore."
The experience is perfect because I was telling him a joke, and he'd been 20 years in Vegas. He'd been hearing jokes all his life.
That's
So
right.
he could easily react to the bad joke about the
Right.
Cadillac.
Right.
You know, it was wonderful, the experience.
I just remember him coming in the room going, To the victor belong the spoils.
He was great when he was dressed in that hunting costume.
Oh my God.
The sign said bear left. Right? He's like, so he turned around and went home.
That's right.
That was a really fun episode to shoot. That was being in the woods for a week. I always said God is a Sopranos fan because whenever we needed some weird weather thing to happen, it would happen. We needed it to rain, it rained. It snowed, it snowed. It was always work to the benefit
We
of the show.
never thought about that show being in the snow because
Right.
it wasn't snowing.
Right.
And the snow added so much to that.
Just
And that was
elevated
just
it up
a gift.
like-
I mean, the show would not be the same.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't.
And in fact, remember, it was a problem because of the footsteps.
Well, right. Well, it's so funny because even in the Sopranos book, it talks about the history of the show, and the guy said, "What happened when it snowed?" I said, "Well, we didn't think it was going to snow, and it ended up making the show so much more believable that they would be lost." I thought it was great because everything was white. Wherever you looked, it was white. It looked the same. And then you cut to David said it was a total disaster. Why didn't they just follow their footsteps out of the snow?
It was a problem.
But I would never have found my way out of that.
Well, that's a
woods.
good
I don't
point.
care how many footsteps.
Yeah, but
I
wait,
would
if
be
it
walking
kept
around in
snowing, it would
circles.
cover the footsteps, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
But it didn't keep snowing.
Oh,
See,
it didn't keep snowing.
We got out there, and actually, if you look at that show, the first shot we did in the woods was that marching the Russian guy out into the woods, and it is actually still snowing. It just stopped snowing the minute we started filming that, and it just could not have been better. It was just
Which Pine
really.
Barren? Was it Long Island? or-
No, that was in Harriman State Park up by West
This is
Point.
when they wouldn't let us shoot in New Jersey because the Italian Americans, this corrupt county executive, got this thing on his ass about I'm not going to let them shoot. They're a disgrace to Italian Americans, and I'm not going to let them shoot on Essex County streets anymore. And he went to jail 2 years
a year later,
for
this very
corruption.
same guy went to jail for corruption, but we were giving Italian Americans a bad name.
I have to ask you guys something, because do you guys get a lot of people asking you when the movie's coming out?
Mostly from my agent.
From your agent. Do you get people asking you about the movie? And what do you tell them?
I said we don't have a release date yet. No,
Really? Is that what you say?
no, I say there's no movie coming out.
You say absolutely not, maybe.
I mean, it's so. I mean, in a way, it seems silly to me. If somebody had a great idea, God forbid, for a Sopranos movie, and everybody wanted to do it, we'd do it. But we have no plan.
He
There's
shot down my Sopranos, me Frankenstein idea. Not
So
gonna
you
work.
tell people we don't.
AJ, the musical. It's
AJ.
gonna be awesome.
Well, Sopranos, the musical, would actually work. We were saying Nathan Lane as Tony. We're trying to do
I
it.
can sing and dance. So
There
we
you
can,
go.
That's right.
Yeah, you can play your own
so I
part.
can play my
yeah.
own part.
That's
so you can
true.
do Melfi.
Yeah, right.
And
The thing about the movie is, if it comes, if it's meant to be, it will be.
How many Star Trek movies have there been? 5, 6?
No, but it has to be special. As the show was, it came with your heart and your inspiration, everything that was true.
Someone asked me about, what was it like? And I said, it was the best summer job I ever had.
Yeah.
It was like, it's what you would write about in elementary school, my summer job. I still remember the first season because I've described it as what it was like when you were working, if you had been doing a play somewhere with this new guy, Tennessee Williams.
Yeah, right.
That's what it was
Exactly.
like. It was like, nobody knew us. Nobody knew anything about it. We didn't know if it would be a success, and we just thought, this is the greatest job I ever had, and so every day was a pleasure.
As an actress who works, there's a lot of blessing that you guys were, you were blessed with having actors, a team.
it always seemed to me, and I'd worked in television a long time, that there was none of the usual bullshit about my camper is close.
No.
I remember
No.
working on a TV show where the male lead and the female lead, the AD had to go out and measure with a
No.
tape measure the distance between the two trailers to the
serious?
front door of the set.
That's how me and Aida were.
Yeah, right. Well,
You didn't know
Yeah,
it. I
I
didn't want to
didn't-
bring you into it, but
It was never about that kind of stuff.
No,
it was never about
No,
that.
the other thing, too, is, it was so welcoming for people who didn't even work on the show.
And another thing about the actors is there was never any jealousy. If someone had a good episode, it wasn't like, well, where's my good episode? Or how come I couldn't? Like, everyone was always like, you'd see it and be like, that was great. I'm so happy you did. Like, everyone was always proud.
I don't know about that one. No, I know
in
there's
the,
jealousy.
in the main ones?
Just like that in the writers'
in the
room.
main
We had no jealous people up there.
The way in the writers' room used to work, we would come up with story ideas and then outline the stories, and David wouldn't assign who gets to write a story until they were all, because what would happen is if you come up with an outline for a story and they say,
Yeah.
okay, well, you write it, suddenly, the tendency might be to just tune out while you're thinking of the other stories, like, I got mine, or how am I going to write this scene? So nobody knew what they were going to write until everybody had enough outlines to go around to write things.
okay.
So it kept everybody as invested in every story as the other ones. I think it was season 5 when the story where Adriana dies came up, and it wasn't in the sequence for me to write it. However, it worked out. And I think for the first time in my 5 years on the show, I said, I'm writing that episode. And it was supposed to go to somebody else, and we literally had to debate it. And I said, I don't care, I'm writing that one. And thank God I did.
I don't think that's
It was such a
jealousy.
great
I think that's just wanting.
Well, it was
to write.
jealousy.
It's also being exciting to work. You know,
Yeah.
when if it was such work, you'd be like, oh, you do that, you know.
Right,
But you were excited to do it.
Our outlines were very sparse. I mean, they were really, 1 or 2 line description of what would happen in a scene. For example, AJ tries to commit suicide in a comical yet tragic way. I think that was exactly how he described it. So even like writing the AJ suicide scene, I remember going home and saying, okay, how do you write a comical scene with a 19-year-old guy trying to kill himself? And I thought about it, and then I kept going back. You go through the many ways that one might kill themselves, and then somehow arrive back at that pool, which was so big in the pilot and with the ducks and
So
everything.
that was not
So
even.
emotional.
So putting it in the pool
No,
was
that was
not in the
even
description.
outline.
That was not in the
No,
job
I didn't know that.
description.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
I mean,
that.
I was at one point, thinking of, guns and
great.
other things, and then the pool thing, and then I said, well, how do you do that
great.
comically? And you think, well, if the rope is too long, you can't actually.
That was
we
really
And
talk
then,
about that?
fabulous.
what was that like filming that scene for you in
My
the
God,
in the
really?
pool? I mean, I know that must. I mean, you weren't like a swimmer to begin with, right? I mean,
Absolutely not.
But
Not at
you've
all.
sunk pretty quickly, I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's Cinderella.
Well, the first thing I did when I read it, I was like, it was the middle of January, so I'm like, oh wow, I wonder where we're gonna do this. And then, and then they were like, oh no,
New Jersey.
you're doing it at the pool in New Jersey. So I was like, wow, okay. And
That was
You
the
know.
subject of a lot of debate. I
lot
have to
of
tell you, we were
debate.
thinking about the weather. Well,
I'm
what if
sure
we
you
gave-
were.
Did you hate?
And I remember I was sitting on the edge of the diving board, and there was a guy who was talking to me who was a diver, and he's like, I've been doing this for 15 years, and blah, blah, blah. And I was sitting at the edge, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, well, I could ask this guy, and he'll make me feel better. And I'm like, oh, what's it like? And he looked up, and he was like, it's cold. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, he was supposed to tell me it's fine, don't worry about it.
Oh, shoot.
But I also have asthma. So I was like, I got to put a bag over my head and tie a rubber band around it and then jump in freezing cold water. And, it was definitely, it was good because it gave me, so much
Motivation,
like anxiety.
yeah.
And I was just, it was a very weird day. But like you said, people were crying and it was real.
Yeah, we all knew what the outcome was. We knew that you don't kill yourself ultimately, but particularly we got to the scene where Jim jumps in the water and pulls you out, and I don't think there was any acting at that point. He literally had to pull you out.
Yeah.
So all of that emotion and huffing and puffing was absolutely real.
Yeah.
And watching that play out in front of you in real time was just so moving. And Timmy yelled cut, and you look around and half the crew was crying.
Well, I remember it got to a point where the second day of filming it, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, and they wanted to get some certain shot. And where I went up to Timmy, and I looked at Timmy and I was like, listen, I can't
Right.
do another one. I was like, that's it. And he was like, all right. So I went back and, we sat in the camper and I felt like crap because I hate letting everybody down because they're my friends and the people I work with. And they were like, we want you to come up and try something one time. Just try it for us. And I was like, so I'm like, fine. So I get, out of the camper, and I'm so pissed off. And I get up there, and as soon as I walked onto the set, everybody just turned around and started clapping. And it was just, yeah. And I was just like, I felt like I was gonna cry, and I was like, oh my God. And everybody just came over and they hugged me, and they were like, we're so proud of you, and that was so amazing. And they're like, now get the hell out of here and go home.
You
And-
were great.
Yeah, it was
I have to
great.
say, I was lucky enough to write and direct you. And the first thing I directed in the episode, Walk Like a Man, and we did a scene in the bed. It was you and Jim in the bedroom, in your bedroom,
Yeah, I remember.
where you were telling him that Blanca broke up with you. And it was the first take, and it was a two-shot. It was you and Jim together. And you were so good that Jim pulled me aside and said, I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know how he's doing it. If I were you, I would move in for his single now. He goes, because I don't know if he can sustain this emotion.
I don't know what the hell's going on. Robert's good right now.
Yeah, so you better get it on film immediately.
It's
It
insane.
may never happen
Once in a
again.
lifetime thing.
For me, too, I joined the show in the second season. You were 11,
The second season, I was maybe 13.
13. And to have worked with you all these years and see you develop as an actor and then get to the point where you were, forget about holding your own with these people who have done this and, multiple Emmy-winning, theater-trained, all of this stuff. You were every bit right
Lorna.
there in these
Thank
scenes,
you.
and it was
Natural.
really, really impressive. And I mean, the odds of having cast a kid who said "What no fucking ziti" to grow into that actor and the actor you are today
great.
was just really amazing.
Well, I was just thinking just the opposite. I was thinking that no, I was just thinking.
What happened to this kid?
No. I was thinking that, you know, maybe it's easy for a kid to play a kid, but you had it from the beginning. This is the first time I thought that. I thought, yeah, where we says, well, Robert really developed. Well, maybe not.
He was 13 years old. I used to break his balls inside. He'd come right back at you. He didn't
That's
hesitate.
true.
He was really sharp.
Well, he was given an opportunity to go to that place. It was the first time he had that to act on that level.
Well, I think also the best acting school in the world because you're working with
That's
some of the
exactly
best
what I was just gonna
actors.
say.
That's for sure.
Some of the best actors in the country, and you're with them every day. And I wondered about that actually. I
People
thought
came
about
up
that.
to me and they were like, wow, you know, I forget who it was, but several people on the show came up to me and they were like, wow, have you been taking, you know, acting classes and have you been, and I'm like, I've been around Edie and Jim and these people for 10 years now, and I guess it's just.
Because I can think of many instances where by season 2 there would have been a tragic death in the family.
I remember the first day on the pilot, you talked to me, you said, I'm a little confused. But I said, well, just do this all the time. And you said, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good, I'll do this. And we did it in the pilot and never did it again.
I remember you said you were waiting for your glasses, and you said, I don't know who I am until I put my glasses
I
on.
have to make a confession, though. But I did ask David first, could I have the glasses? And you said, okay.
You got the glasses?
Oh, yeah, I took them home.
Oh,
No, I didn't bring them with
about
me.
stealing from the set.
At the end, the final shot, I said, David, can I have these? He said, yes. And I have them home near my computer, which I don't use, right next to my mother's picture.
That's sweet.
Thanks for the glasses. I'll drink to the glasses. Thank you, David.
Glasses up.
Uncle Junior's glasses. Those things never fit, right? They were not the right size.
The lenses were like, could you see out of those
Your head
things?
would be twice as big.
Wow.
So that's why, you know,
Those are
perfect for the character. It was a mask. It was a mask. It was a genius. A genius idea. I don't know whose idea. Was that your idea, David?
I think so.
Yeah.
So when you would wear those and act in a scene, though, was it distracting for you, or did it take you? You couldn't, because you can't. Can you see the other actor's eyes, or?
No, I got used to them.
Wow.
You'd be surprised how your eyes they acclimate to the accommodate the glasses.
Did you write that in, or did you just decide when you started?
No, it was written
Don-
in. It didn't say he had Coke bottle lenses. I think it said in the script, right?
Called him all kinds of names. He called me Mummy Head. The other guy called him
Mr. Magoo.
Christopher called me Mr. Booty.
That was in the first season.
Mummy head. Right.
Yeah, that was great.
That's great, you know.
That's right.
That's because it's all about frustration. And Uncle Junior, as far as I'm concerned, was a very frustrated guy.
That's nice to have something special.
Well, it's nice that you asked. I didn't. I think it was
didn't
about
ask?
in season 3. I started looking around on the set. It was like I had my eye on that panther above the fireplace for like 2 years, and I thought, you know, unless you're really familiar with the show, you don't know what that panther is. And then probably the greatest gift for set theft in the world presented itself in season 4. We had the painting of Tony with the horse.
With the horse.
And there was only like 3 of those. So at some point I said to Diana Burton, our prop master, I said, you know, if one of those paintings should somehow find its way into my office, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Pretty grateful.
And one day I came in and there's this big box and it's one of those paintings. So it's Tony and the horse. And you know, later on in the show, he had the painting was doctored to have him in like the Revolutionary War era costume. So I didn't tell anybody I had this painting, and I was having dinner with David like 6 months later, and he says, you know what I need to get from my place in France is that painting of Tony and the horse. And I was like, which one? And he goes, the one with the tricorn hat. And I was like, oh, thank God, because I had the other one. So I never said anything. And then David came to my house in L.A., I think like 6 months ago, and he walked in and it's above my, yeah, they didn't say anything. He was like, oh, that's nice. And that was it. So, but I think that's the only thing prop-wise that I have.
You didn't take
Well,
anything?
no, I mean, I didn't know what to take, but at the last day when I got to work with Dominic, which was really special.
Oh, yeah, that was
And that
special.
was a sad scene, and that was a hard place to film, but the crew came up and they gave me my chair back.
Oh, that's
So that was really special, because you don't think, what am I gonna go take, you know, like, and then you kind of wish you had something, so at least I have the chair back, so that's
Right.
good. Well, how many things do you have, Dave?
I have.
Because the house.
Do you have a garage?
I have the house, about 8 cars, most of the guns.
The other thing, occasionally, you know, one of the great side benefits of writing the show is if we would inadvertently throw in the name of a product, that company would just start sending stuff. So we came in, there was an offhanded mention of Bosco in one of the scripts. We came in and we had like 10 cases of Bosco. So I started like grabbing Bosco with both arms. And then we started trying to figure out, well, what else could we write?
Cadillacs?
Cadillac didn't fall for it. We never got one single car. But so that stuff was good.
People always thought it was that product placement. It wasn't.
No, it was
we
just
used to
stuff
just do
we
it
liked. I used to
or
drive.
whatever.
I lived in Westchester for a while on the show, and I used to pass this place called Stu Leonard's every day. It was this huge store, and it was a funny name. And I just wrote in one day, the guy who burglarized Stu Leonard's, and then we got this fax, this beautiful letter from the owner of Stu Leonard's. Said, "Thank you so much for mentioning the show."
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
It's better when you're doing it because
genuine.
it's, there's no, let's plan it, let's, give credit somewhere. That's why it works. It works in the show because it's coming from you guys.
The amazing thing about shooting the show in New York would be, the show would air and then you'd be at dinner and you'd hear people at other tables talking about the show.
That's true.
I can't tell you how many times, I'm sure you've had this experience. You're sitting there and you start to overhear a conversation of 8 people laughing and talking. And, the temptation, ego-wise is to say, I wrote that, I work on the show. And it was just amazing, or, for a particularly popular episode would be on, and that's, you'd hear it all around. And it's just such a, having been on all the other, we all have the shared experience of been on, having resumes that are checkered with shows that people go,
Oh, what show was that?
yeah, I think I've heard of
My
that.
mother liked
to
that.
go from that to hearing people on the radio discussing an episode that you worked on, or you wrote, or acted in, was just incredible, and it's just, very, very rare.
I know Brad Gray said to me, like in the second season, he said, this is a once in a lifetime thing for all of us. This probably isn't gonna happen anything like this again.
So what else are you going to miss the most?
Me? No, I wanted to ask her about being a good mom. I was like,
I'm going to miss her being a good mom.
Okay.
Here's the thing. If you look at the way those 2 kids ended up, it was not where anybody wanted them to be, but it's better than where it started.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Anthony Jr. is not going to be a killer of men, right? He's not going to be much of anything, but he's not going to be a killer. Right? And also the daughter is not going to be like a housewife whore. She's going to have a career of some kind.
Right.
And so it wasn't doctor, lawyer,
Right.
and all that stuff, but there was a little bit of movement. So I think they both did a good job.
for being so status conscious also, I always felt like Carmela, in the end, really did have the best interest of the kids. A lot of it was about how will this look, and there was a lot of comedy played for, like, Charmaine coming over and talking about how, she was dating Patsy's kid and all that.
Right.
And that was throughout the series. It wasn't just
Right.
then. There was a lot of how will this look, but I always felt that on some level, she really cared. She didn't want them to get hurt.
Right.
It was actually illuminating to me just as a parent. When we were talking about the episode where AJ goes into the city and he lies about going into the city, and David says this thing, and it's amazing that you are so in touch with that part of, it's really childhood. It's like, I guess you had a teenager more recently or something, but you said he doesn't want to go. He does not want to go into the city and hang out with these kids. He would love an excuse not to go, even though they told him he can't go. And Carmela's reaction to it, which David frequently did in the room, which is, he's got no eyebrows, Tony. And I always felt that the way they snapped into action, in the same way when he was depressed, it's to me one of the funniest things ever in the show is when Tony's talking about taking AJ out to get a blowjob, basically, and you open the door.
Oh, that was great.
And the shot is great. It's just hilarious. But I always felt like, yeah, she is a mother. It's not just about like what the other people's kids are doing. And
she worked hard at it. She really did work hard at it, I think. She really worked overtime trying to do right by those kids, I believe.
Is there a debate? Because it sounds like it's unanimous that she was a good mother. Who is there?
I mean, I don't know that I'm in a position to discuss it any more than any viewer of the show, oddly. But she knew what was going on, though. How do you make peace with that? Why didn't she take her kids out of that house?
I don't know.
She
Who
was
does
so
that?
deep. Well, I don't know. Somebody who really genuinely has their best interests at heart. I don't know.
Well, because they were really provided for.
But deprive them of their father, who they, to destroy that it's really hard.
It's complicated.
It's
though.
really
It's definitely complicated.
It's very
She's
complicated.
a God-fearing woman whose husband kills people, and she knows all of this.
You're in complete denial about
That's
that.
exactly what it is. But to have a parent in complete denial about anything is not necessarily a good thing.
See, I thought by the end.
I'm just saying.
That doesn't make you a bad mother.
That makes you a mother. So I don't.
Makes you a
It's a regular old mother.
That's exactly right.
I
But,
thought
is
by
she a
the
good mother?
end,
That's-
I thought by the end, especially after Tony got shot and she went and talked to Melfi, that it became obvious that, this woman married this kind of man. This is a very, look what America thinks of him, This is a very sexy, powerful man. And if you really have some misgivings, as many immigrants do, about the culture, about participating in society wholeheartedly. We still take care of our own. We prefer our own people. We don't trust the English, whatever. There is there is a shtetl or whatever mentality among a lot of immigrant groups, whatever else it is, that you pick your own over the law immediately.
Right.
And if you look at who that man is and say she knows that on some level, he is so tender and kind to those kids as much as anyone could be. And for whatever reason, I've spent my whole life marveling about why, women marry football players and things like that, but I'm not that kind of man. But I always felt like that was the bargain that she got into. Right. She got a ton out of it. And on some level, I don't think she really would ever like to think about him murdering people or shooting Adriana or any of these things these horrible things we saw him do, strangling somebody with his bare
She's in denial about that level, but she's not in denial
but
about
I don't
the whole
think she's in
thing.
denial. I think it's so, like she says it about the broken arm and the drill and everything. I always believe that's sort of what you go in for.
One of the things that happened, I think, to us, to the show, was that, and I've said this before, I said you are such a great actress, and you were put in this position where you were carping about all that shit all the time. And I just started to think, well, I don't believe this. Why is she complaining about this? Oh, so the guy, he's a criminal, and it was like one of the last vestiges of TV morality in the show, and it had to be dealt with. It wasn't right that she should be crying to these people about it all the time. It's like either you do it or you don't. Right. And we had to, and the way to get there was to go through the whole separation and all that stuff.
I understand.
Because I felt that you were having to say the same lines too often.
I was so deep in it, I was not even aware of it.
But dramatically, there was something great about Meadow judging her. Remember, as she became a woman, her life, all that stuff was fantastic stuff for everyone. Looked at that, and recognized that immediately, And then to me, I wrote that episode with her going to Melfi, and when David breaks the story, and you get it, there's lines of dialogue, and one of the lines of dialogue with which that scene had to be built around was, believe me, there are a lot worse people than my husband. And I go to my priest, that line, I go to my priest and I cry and I complain, but believe me, there's a lot worse people than my husband. Right. And when he said that, I was like, well, this is a huge breakthrough, this scene. This is a big deal. And I thought, I totally believed it. I completely believed it.
Well, I was thinking about that when you were talking about this before. I was just thinking, in this environment, in the era that we live in, how could you not think that to yourself? My husband? What, he clips $1.5 million a year off of people? Look at these pigs. Look at these horrible monsters that are ruining this nation, It's nothing. This is small potatoes.
Right.
How could you not feel that? I mean, it's an excuse.
Right.
It's a rationalization, and it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with morals. But how could you not say that to yourself?
What are you going to miss?
It hasn't been spoken about enough tonight, really, but being on this, you mentioned it once, but being on the set, the crew was incredibly grateful to be there and also really smart and really funny and really person you were dealing with was like at the top of their game and really enjoying being there.
Oh, yeah.
And
Dedicated.
yeah, so being on the set I think is what I'm going to miss the most, and maybe being at the very beginning of a tone meeting is what I'm going to miss the least.
So what's a tone meeting?
A tone meeting is where you go through the script with the director, and you go through every piece of business, every story point.
And in most shows, the writers help you out and they tell you what it's about. But on this show, the director has to get up and sort of tell them what he thinks it's about, and then get smacked around or hugged.
Well, we changed. At first, we didn't. Remember, in the first
At
season,
first,
we
no,
did it the
wasn't
other
like
way.
that. Right.
And then it just felt like we were talking for 5 hours. Well, we think it means this, and blah, blah, blah. And it just seemed like counterproductive bullshit.
Well, we also never knew if the directors had any idea if they were listening, if they're doodling, if they were spacing out, they're thinking about what's for dinner, you know.
And it made us do our work, and also it carries into other things. I know on other shows now I sort of go in like hyper prepared because of my experience here.
They
We
would
always thought that we
never,
were
ever
watching.
tell you how they were going to shoot it.
Right.
Because they could get it rejected.
It was so that you weren't sending someone out into the battlefield when they hadn't read the battle plan, or we hadn't agreed, we were going to attack on December 7th, and the other guy thinks, well, no, it's the 8th.
It did get easier as we used the same directors over and over again.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
as we always,
was always
had
the same.
Alan Coulter and Alan Taylor and Tim Van Patten and John Patterson. Well, it was harder the first season where we had a lot more directors, and also it was new for us. And then the second season, but as it got to seasons 5, 6, 6.5, or 7, whatever you want to call it, we had so few directors, and Terry directed, who was writing the show, and Phil directed. So people who had been there all the time. So tone meetings got a little simpler.
But it's so thrilling to be on the set and work with these incredible craftspeople and see you guys work and see your words brought to life, and they're better than you imagined them. But my favorite part was being locked in the room with you and Terry and the writers, being in the writers' room. And we talked, honestly, at this level, to avoid working, which was work. We had conversations like this probably 80% of the time. This is the kind of stuff we talked about. And a lot of it was about the show and what would Carmela do? What is she like? How do these people feel? My mother did this, my sister did that. Let me tell you a story. And one of the amazing things is, if you come into it, David would tell stories, and the characters in the stories are from his family, and they are in the show. And I'm not just talking about like names and places. You came in, you told some story, and in the story there were like 10 things that had been in the show. Not just like relatives and addresses and the being locked in the garage and like scenes, whole things. And I was like, and all I'm thinking is like, God, these people must be so pissed when they saw the show.
They all loved it.
They did love it. They did love it.
Well, this goes back to our first conversation. One of the first conversations I had with David, we were talking, and I said, David, this is a shockingly good script. I mean, I've never acted before, but I get scripts all the time for music, and they always suck, And this is really good, This is, I said, but there's one thing in it that I just really, I got a little, I don't know, something a little concerned about, I said, I'm Italian American, and a lot of my friends are Italian American. And I said, I've never seen a mother like this. Most Italian American mothers that I know of, they're just like very, very loving and sweet and, very, very different. I said, I'm just not sure the public is going to buy this mother. I said, where'd this come from? He says, that's my mother. I was like, oh, there goes that job. That's the quickest acting career in history. But anyway, but then I said, so he says, well, so what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know where you want to take the character, but just promise me one thing. Promise me I get to kill somebody, because, so I don't know what this acting thing's all about, but it should be, one of the things that it should be about is doing things you can't do in real life. So, like the next to last, we're getting near the end of this first season, I said, pull him aside. I said, David, I said, I'm not seeing any, promise. So I got to kill Jimmy the prop guy.
Yeah, right. That was a great killing too.
Which was good.
Right.
And then but the one people remember, of course, is Drea. Which if I ever act again, and if I act in 100 movies, I don't imagine doing anything that could be as difficult as that. It was really difficult to. Not shooting somebody doesn't mean anything, but you see these things on the screen and they look easy. They look. I don't know. They don't look that difficult. And Drea, she was a tough kind of chick. When you put your hands on a girl in an act of violence, I mean, it's so despicable to have to actually do that. And it was really hard, really hard. That was the most I ever had to.
It was, huh?
I really had to, like everybody talks about being in the moment. I mean, I really had to be in that moment because that was really hard to do.
I came to the show as this incredible admirer of the show, but you get in there and you are working in someone else's vision, someone else's complete world. And what Jim said to me, and I think you also said at one point, is that there's not a lot of questions, and it's not just because you're just doing it. It's because there is a trust that everything has been thought about. And that there's a reason for everything. And even if you don't know if that reason's in the distance or if it's something that happened, I remember specifically, like in terms of working in someone else's style, I did the first draft of the episode where Carmela and Mr. Wegler had their affair. And David was not happy with the draft. And I just remember him saying to me, he goes, "And what is this about?" He goes, "These people." I said, "Well, she's happy. She's had sex for the first time with a man other than her husband. I think she's, overwhelmed with emotion." He goes, "These people don't experience that kind of joy." And I was like, that's true. And you know what? You experience, I have to say, you did experience the right amount of joy that Carmela would, and you were happy with it too. There was but it was not like what I had in mind. I was,
For me, just after a while, because we would have a lot of conversations, and after a while, you realize, what are you arguing with here? What are you doing? Because you can argue with somebody's intellect, but you can't argue with somebody's instinct.
Right.
No.
And he was a guy at a certain point in his life where, part of it was thought through, but part of it wasn't. Part of it was just pure, 30, 40 years of instinct of just like not wanting to do the cliche or, going this way, zigging instead of zagging, or you know what I mean? And
but
it was
also
done.
personal concerns that I assume grow up out of your life, like, therapy and what it can do and can't do, or Buddhism and what it can answer and can't answer, and stuff like that. That's very personal.
Not really. No. I mean, I never explored Buddhism really, but therapy I certainly explored, and living in New Jersey I certainly explored.
And you were interested in Buddhism.
I don't know how I'd call it that I was interested in Buddhism per se, but I'm interested in. I don't want to die.
There's a lot of that in the show, and there's many times there's been an expression that, and you, like Tony, are hoping, you wish that there was a way, that there was, in the Buddhist sense, the way. I started talking about these other things, and we talked about death a lot in that room. Death, food, about half and half, but there was this moment of like, okay, so is there a way? Is there a way? And I like looking it up online and starting to study about it, just starting reading about it, like someone studying a foreign culture. And what really came out of it, putting Tony into that on some level, was like, we were like, on some level, this has got to be like a primitive human desire to have these kinds of feelings, to answer these kinds of questions. But how much does Tony really know about it?
Right.
And the best solution to this to me was that after we did this thing with the monks and the whole other world, David writes in this thing where he's watching Kung Fu on TV. And you realize that somewhere in Tony's life, he was exposed to Buddhism, even if it was on Kung Fu. Right? I mean, that really was what it was about on some level.
Yeah. Well, where I go with that right away is that we had the money to do things like that. That they would give you the money to license Kung Fu. Right. I mean, that's not cheap. Everything we did cost, Everything that we did was expensive. That little joke, that sort of passing joke, cost another 50 grand or something, right? So we were lucky.
So did you have to audition for the part, or was it just
Yes,
offered
in
to you?
fact, I did. I did have to audition. Funny you should ask. It was, I was very busy at the time, as a matter of fact. I was doing Oz, and
I worked with you on Oz.
that's right. That's not what this is about, though. And I went to the audition, and I'd had, I guess, 4 scenes to prepare or something. And I went there, and I did the 4 scenes, and then you gave me another one to read on the spot, the MRI scene where he goes into the MRI. And it scared the hell out of me, but also I was very easygoing at this audition.
Yes.
Is that, did I
Yes,
really?
you did, and we were at the Regal Royal, at the big suite of the Regal Royal
Really?
Hotel.
I used to skate everywhere. That's
You
how I got
arrived
around
on
for years and
skates.
years.
No.
Like
No, I
Carmelo
rollerbladed
skates.
everywhere. I didn't realize
Rollerblades,
that
right,
I
you ride on
rollerbladed to that.
rollerblades.
Inline
Yeah.
skates or?
It's really not too classy. Anyway, there was something.
We tried to work that into the show, too, the Carmela
It's not too
rollerblading,
late,
it
my
just
friend.
didn't.
Happy to throw
Now
some
that's,
money
see,
your
that's
way.
the feature.
Oh, for God's sake. And
The honeymooners went skating.
That's right.
I wasn't, I didn't have much invested because I was working at the time, and it really does,
You work on Oz.
yeah, it changes the way you walk into an audition. I felt particularly undesperate. And I
That's
thought this,
why you got it.
well, I also was absolutely sure I'd never be cast, because based on other experiences I had a very specific visual image of this woman that I was not. Just because there's not, there isn't a lot of creativity in regard to, whatever, my thoughts of an Italian-American wife. I don't know, she didn't look like me. So I was very surprised. And that was another thing that took pressure off in the audition. I thought, I will never get cast. I know who will, and I can name the 3 or 4 names, but, and it's fine.
So was it one audition and you got it, or
Yeah, it was
or
one
9,000
audition.
auditions and that was the first?
One audition, and the next day I got a call saying they want you.
Wow.
Did you want it? I mean, did you know
Sure.
about
I
your?
mean, it was
yeah.
also at the point. I mean, this is not to denigrate anything about this experience, obviously, but I just wanted to work.
Right.
I wanted any job.
Right.
So I was thrilled. I was thrilled that I got the job, and it's one of those things like when you're crossing the street and you come within inches of getting hit by a car. You get to the curb, you're like, holy shit! I almost died just
Right.
now. The feeling I have about my lackadaisical attitude about that audition,
Right.
I sometimes have like. Can you imagine if I had just said, you know what, I'm really busy, I can't go to that audition, or whatever,
Although
other
it's probably true that some of
response
that
I could have
attitude
had.
was probably what glided you through in a really.
Perhaps.
Or if they had
Perhaps
picked up
so.
Fargo, the series.
That's exactly right. Which I was devastated that it didn't go, and it's so much better to stay out of these things.
What
They
was
always
the
work
what
out
was the
better.
time frame? I mean,
How do you
between
mean?
like knowing that show wasn't picked up and getting this job.
I don't remember.
But you had done Fargo
I
already.
had done Fargo. Maybe
What, a
we were
pilot?
still maybe we were still waiting to hear. Because I remember there being something about the contracts. I wasn't completely out of contract for them, even though
Oh, they probably had a
they
call
hadn't
on you.
picked it
yeah.
up.
So you never auditioned them together,
No,
Jim and
no,
Edie together?
never did.
We had cast every
weren't
other
you worried
part.
about that?
I guess we weren't.
So was she the last part to cast?
You were.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, later on, we did audition
Well,
people
did-
that
you
way
didn't-
for
did you-
chemistry.
You did not come to HBO?
No, I sat and I went in that hotel room one time, and the
That's
next day you
right,
guys
that's-
called me.
That's right. We was right at the end. We didn't have
We
it.
had
wasn't
cast
happening.
everything. We had already brought everybody else to LA and did that little dog and pony show.
That's
and then
right,
the
it
one
wasn't
part
happening.
that we didn't have cast.
It was her and Nancy too, I think.
Right. Well, no, Nancy had, because Nancy came to the 72nd Street tap dancing place, so you had seen her there.
And such
These were our glory
beginnings.
days.
That's when this operation was a little more classy. But did you know Jim from before?
No.
When you went to?
No, not at all.
That's right. We didn't read you two together.
No.
That's pretty gutsy.
And he called me and he was like,
That's
we're
what she
going to
said
be
in her.
husband and wife.
It's very gutsy. That was her. that was her line.
Exactly right. That was that scene. That was one of those scenes, one of my audition scenes, for heaven's sakes. But Jim called me and said, we should probably get lunch or something, I guess, before. I mean, we're going to be married. And we never did.
Is that what he says every
Crazy. Just crazy, isn't it? At what point can we talk about the last episode?
Well, these guys can't talk about the last episode because you already knew.
I knew what the last episode was going to be
I was shocked.
Were you?
Shocked and appalled. And then I got it, then after a while, I got to like it.
I still get stopped. What the hell was that?
Exactly.
But there was a rebellion against it, and then there was a general move to embrace it again.
What is it? Denial, acceptance?
Right, it was the basic stages of.
Well, Stevie, you called me in France, or I forget where I was in Europe. And he said, you understand what's going on here? I said,
He runs away, right?
I know.
He's gone.
We were all like, well, call him.
Did you watch it Sunday night at 9 that night?
I did watch it at 9 o'clock at night, but which is actually 6 o'clock in the morning or something, but it doesn't matter.
That's great. That's great.
I knew a lot of people who were wagering on it about whether Tony would live or die. And they're like, you should get in on this. This is like real, you can bet in Las Vegas. And I was like, all I'm thinking is like, how are they gonna settle? There's gonna be people with broken legs or like anger, I don't know what to do, and then when it ended, he called me up and goes, oh, that's why you wouldn't bet. And I'm like, so who won the bet? And he's like, oh, it's a mess.
But what happened when you called me and you said, you know what's going on here? And I said, yeah, I've sort of read some of the press reports. And then you were on the Wise Guy show on Sunday and you had to defend it or something?
No, I the next day in Miami, just so happened to have booked me the next morning, right? But they're live across the nation. It's one of those call-in, big syndicated shows. So.
Right.
So the next morning, right after the show, I'm on national radio getting slaughtered by the entire country. I'm like, what timing? But it was actually interesting because you got a chance to actually say, guess what, folks? You're disappointed because it wasn't your ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a compliment to the show because that means you were emotionally engaged in the show, which we appreciate. But guess what? I said, watch it again. And not pretend you're going to watch David Chase's ending. The guys called me later in the week, and they said, the threatening calls, went down as the week went on, to the point where at the end of the week, it was kind of more favorable than unfavorable.
What they hacked into my Wikipedia?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And wrote mean things about you.
And wrote really
the
bad
HBO
things.
website crashed on the whole thing. The people just getting online and, the
It was
blog or whatever,
amazing,
they
though.
crashed. It really was.
People were very angry and nonsensically
But that's the thing.
enraged.
It was irrational.
They
It was
were
totally
like
irrational.
It was like a tantrum.
Because
Yeah.
I started asking people, I'm like, okay, so what's your ending? Let's hear your. I'm sure your ending was much better. Now let's hear it. Okay, and then they're like, well, I said, you want the whole family to be wiped out?
Right.
What do you want? Well, no. Oh, okay. Well, then what? Want the kids killed? What do you want? And by the time the end of the conversation, nobody really thought it, thought it through. They just.
The incredible thing was the week before there had been so much gunplay and action.
Right.
I mean, that was action-packed, and I was literally like, well, that should satisfy the bloodlust of the crowd. And no, not even close. And they were just like,
They weren't looking for bloodlust in the final episode. They were looking for a tied-up ending. They were looking for a resolution. They felt cheated of a
I think
they wanted Tony Soprano's head exploded like a cantaloupe.
Yeah, they did.
You think they wanted
Yeah.
him to die?
They wanted him to
Absolutely.
John
Yes.
Woo movie, go down shooting.
That's what they
and-
wanted. He's their alter ego. They loved it when he was stomping on people and robbing and killing.
Right.
And then they really were not happy unless his head was splattered like a cantaloupe.
Right.
That would be the big, oh
No,
yeah!
they would have loved for him to like shoot his way out of the feds, or like they would like him to go out killing people for
No,
sure.
he's got to die on the steps of the cathedral,
People's theories, people thought Carmela was going to kill him. They thought. That's true.
Jim made it clear to me some years ago that he kind of had an idea, or maybe he actually knew, or maybe you had told him earlier. Mm-hmm. And he always sort of threatened to tell me, and I had absolutely no desire.
You didn't want to?
Yeah, absolutely not. It might have been that. That's a whole other story. But I never wanted to know more earlier than I did what was going to be happening. I mean, I love that we got the scripts, not too terribly far in advance. I was thrilled with that.
You always did like that. You grew up.
It's like in life, I want to know what's happening in, 2 months. That's definitely going to change my behavior right now if I knew. So I love not knowing, and I totally just thought it was the coolest, smartest thing ever.
And what do you think?
So classy.
What do you think it means?
I have absolutely no idea, and that's where I spend much of my life, actually. So.
Because when I first saw it, I thought it meant one thing, and then about a week later, I was firmly decided that he had been shot. And then I think I came to you with it and said, so this is what it means, right? Because my friends are all yelling at me to. And,
Right.
And your answer was great, because you're in the inner circle, and you said every option is live in the room.
That's right.
And,
I think it means that
Yes.
life will go on for them, whatever it is. It either goes on or not goes on, but whatever it is, you're done seeing it. You know, we're.
Yes, I know.
There's the Sopranos
TV
are
is
still
not
there.
broken, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
it.
you're
There's
still
no
doing
more-
wall shopping, but we're just not filming
That's
it anymore.
right.
You're no longer invited.
That's right. In regard to the last episode, the shooting of the Holston's Day, I was sick. I was taking some cold medicine, which I don't normally do, and I was loopy. I was definitely loopy, and I was sort of enjoying it. But to make a long story short, in the entire day of shooting that, I forgot to put on Carmela's rings.
I remember that. That's right.
10 years on that show, I have never not put these rings on.
So now people will be racing to their DVDs to
So you're not wearing the
double
rings
check.
The whole
The
thing?
entire final
And she called
scene,
me
I
to
said,
confess.
So you must have felt horrible.
I
know
couldn't,
you're
I
like,
was
yeah.
wrecked.
Aren't there other people whose
Right.
job
I
it
was
is
sort
to
of
look at
playing
that
it in
too?
my
Well, that's the
head
thing. We
and
were
then-
all tired, and I just wasn't getting. There are like two very quick shots where my hand goes like
I
this.
knew the ending
But
sucked.
I was sure that this was going to come up as something in some
yeah.
website or
No,
some
no, I read it.
reason.
I read it on the internet. That was one of the proofs that Paul McCartney was dead.
So needless to say, I carried that for a long time, and these guys never said anything to me, and I did come clean about
You
it.
did
so I
come
figured it was all
clean.
right. But I was surprised I didn't hear from somebody that it had some significance that I was not aware of.
But see, if you'd let us, we could have spent HBO's last $200,000 putting a sparkle as your hand went up to your.
CGI.
That's one of those, if the editors aren't noticing it, then.
That's I know, but I really,
No, but it's-
I'm so neurotic about that stuff, so it was
course,
really
of
messed
course
up
you
for
will.
me.
So are
That
we. Oh my
scene, it's like,
God.
oh,
For
God.
me to have not remembered that one day, it was changing at like 3 in the morning. We were done, and I went like this, and I was like, oh my God, my rings are in my pocket. They're in my pocket. They're not on my shoe. It's not too late. All day, the entire day of shooting. Anyway, I'm over it now, as you can see.
We had fake ending.
We wrote fake endings
Oh, you
for,
did?
well, because when people started
The scripts
stealing the
came out,
scripts
yeah.
and stuff
Right,
like that.
The ending when I got there was the ending was with Adriana. And it was her,
Adriana?
yeah, there was a point at the end of the 5th season that there was going to be something with her leaving New Jersey, although I don't know because I had only been, you told me the end of the whole show, but I'd only been on the show for about 3 months or 4 months.
So you weren't really
so
hearing anything.
He was telling me a fake ending so that I wouldn't tell anybody in case I got fired. And of course, the ending had to be good enough that I wouldn't lose respect for him. So he had obviously worked on this fake ending to tell me.
Is that true, really?
Before you knew I could be trusted.
Were you a test audience for the fake?
No.
Like
It
a
was,
test
it was
audience
a good ending. It's not as good as what happened. It was interesting because the fake endings. I remember when we did the episode with beginning of 6 with Tony getting shot. That we shot one with Frank Vincent outside the house, shooting in through the window. And Frank Vincent, Phil Leotardo, Frank Vincent says, why am I shooting Tony? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And it's, don't worry about it, doesn't mean anything, because he's like, because I don't have any reason to, like, he knows that this is like, if I shoot Tony, I think it's pretty much I'm out of the show.
To do this?
It's really, he was worried.
Remember, there was a leak somewhere on the
Yeah.
crew. There was a leak.
Because there was the Phil Leotardo one, then there was also another version where it was just a hand, and we don't know. It's a hand through the window with a gun, and we don't know who it is. Bang, next.
The old copperhead.
It was, cliffhanger.
The scene with Tony and Junior. A lot of this crew just had that part of the script. That's where the show ended. They didn't have the other part.
Because then I got the real script and I assumed you were hiding 15 pages. I got to the end and thought, oh, he's being very clever. That's, I'm not that high on the totem pole. I can't read the real.
So do some of our bosses, actually.
We had a script that ended with Tony raking
Leaves.
leaves. I mean, there's a scene where he rakes leaves, and then he goes on to do all this other stuff. And you came out and said to him, "We're going to go to Holston's or something,
right.
That scene is in the show. It comes to like 10 minutes before the end or 5 minutes before the end. And that's what we gave out to the crew because we didn't want 100, 200 people. The department heads had the whole thing, but the rest of the crew had just because people leave these things on buses and stuff.
Right.
So
Yeah,
and there was
we
a
used to
lot
find
of.
them on the subway. I would find them on the N train that sides from the Sopranos, like hours
That was
later.
your job, right? To
Yeah, that's my job.
So there was a lot of talk about whether this is the way to end this. This is what before we're going to shoot. This is what should we do this? This is going to be horrible. What is it? So, you know, and I thought I'd come up with this thing 3 years ago, and I thought this is the way to do it. But then people were saying, "Gee, I don't get it," and all that stuff. So then I went to the men's room at Silver Cup, and Sal, the accountant's in the men's room. He said, "I read the script. I think the ending is fantastic." I said, "Do you?" Wow, thank you. Really? Oh, it's amazing. Tony raking leaves there. I said, "Oh shit." He's just in his environment, raking the leaves. I think that's so poetic, so wonderful. But you know, one thing I was thinking about before, when we were talking about sort of the lightning that struck, how things worked out well, it was like you coming onto the show, for an example, and then in some way, that show became a rock and roll show. The Sopranos. It had a lot to do with rock and roll. It had a lot to do with the attitudes of rock and roll, and that had always been, you know, when we were starting to get it up on its feet, and I said, well, we need $50,000 an episode for music clearance. People said, well, what for? And I didn't really know the answer. I mean, I'd seen, you know, I knew Scorsese's work with, you know, music and all that stuff. I mean, you know, people had done that before, and I think that somehow or other, it started with you, and then it became a very rock and roll kind of, it's for television. It became, I don't know if I'm making sense even. Do you feel that at all, or?
The music played a big role, I know that. I mean, in that sort of balancing things out in a funny kind of way. It always kept things grounded for me, because of course I think musically anyway, but the final part of the script, if you will, was always that last song. Yeah. You know, it was always one of the characters in the show.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Yeah. So it kind of like added to this interesting, unique thing.
Yeah,
that
for me,
the show
I was always looking forward to what was the last song going to be, because I saw many different versions with many different choices, and then it was always exciting of like, what did you finally pick for the end?
But musicians always like the show for some reason, right? I mean, we got so much interest from musicians, and I always think, what is that about? What is it they're seeing that they're not seeing in other shows?
Well, believe it or not, a song or two makes a big difference. You know, I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really is a big deal.
But it's also the music you used, and also, I mean, you have such a, you know, and you're part of this too, such a romantic concept of rock and roll, of literally what that means. And part of it is like a little bit of fuck you. Part of it is a little bit of like hardness, a little lack of sentimentality, a little bit of like leaving without saying goodbye. Yeah. You know, seriously, like at whatever part of rock stars, like, you know, throws the TV out the window at the Hyatt on Sunset. That's sort of the part that you really like, I think, on some level. Not the glam part of it, but
that's not.
You don't think so? No, all right, I went too far.
Although we did throw a TV out the window, though.
I went too far. I was a man.
It's fuck you on a much more profound level.
Okay, all right, go ahead. Okay, so it's not the tantrum part of it, but it's the society. It's like I do my own thing.
It is fuck you, though.
It is fuck you.
It is fuck you.
And I honestly, I feel like part of the ending is fuck you.
You said
You know
that.
what?
I want to hear your response to that, though, because when Matt did try to explain the ending to me, when I said, but really he's dead, right? And Matt said, no, it's more things than that. And one of the things you said was basically it's fuck you. And
I think part of it is.
Is it?
Not to me.
No,
to me. Now,
to
other
the
people-
audience.
That was not our intention. Was to say "fuck you" to the audience. It was
But
not.
you
our
just
intention.
heard how endearingly I use the concept of fuck you. What I mean is, I don't care. This is it.
It's
That's
like,
where
this is
it
like
went.
Lenny Bruce.
The
Fuck you
show,
is like
no,
a nice
the
secret.
show went where it went, and that's it.
The whole show was an act of rebellion, and that final scene was the ultimate act.
Yeah.
I'm not playing
You know,
along.
everybody loved it when David broke every rule in the book every week.
Right.
Why are they gonna change their mind in the last scene?
Talk about breaking rules. When the main character, I watched that show as a viewer, when the main character of the show, 5 episodes into the season, strangles someone who has a kid and a wife with his bare hands, and while he's taking his daughter on college interviews, I was like, I turned to Linda, my wife, and I was like, do you understand what just happened here? They're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this. It was really beyond rebellion. It was
Well, I'm glad to hear
creative.
that. Maybe that's what it is. Because I always think, what was the thing about it? It just seemed so rock and roll, and it became more that way. And maybe it was that. It was a rebellion of some kind. I mean, those characters were rebellion. I mean,
But the whole mob genre replaced the Western in that sense
Yeah.
of,
the outlaw
of it
thing,
being
the
the
rock and
outlaws,
roll.
controlling their own destiny, saying fuck you to authority.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
Creating your own world. Well, it's the same as rock and roll.
Give us
To a great 10 years.
Great 10 years.
I know.